Fetters Samyojana, the four planes of liberation, the four stages of awakening. Sometimes you can see I use the similar terms for translations so that you can get certain idea regarding different terms which are used when translating Pali terms. The Pali term Samyojana is generally translated into English as fetters, which shackles a sentient being to samsara, the cycle of death and birth. So here today we are going to discuss Samyojana or fetters with which the individual is bound to samsaric life. One has to be released. One has to be released from all fetters, from all Samyojanas, in order to attain Nibbana or liberation. So if one can be released totally from all the fetters, thereby he is entitled for total liberation. The individual is tied to existence of suffering, of birth and death by these 10 fetters. Briefly, we can say that fetters are a kind of mental phenomena with which we are bound to samsaric life. The fetters give us a clear account of the self-referent obstacles which obstruct the path to liberation. Therefore, a fetter is a shackle. A fetter is a heavy chain which impedes an individual from moving towards liberation. All fetters together are intrapsychic phenomena which tightly and heavily tie the individual to existence of free becoming. So here you find a particular term. Intrapsychic means being or occurring within the psyche, being or occurring within the mind itself, or related to one's own personality or mentality. First one, Sakkaya Ditti. So this is actually translated using different terms. When referring English translations, we can find different terms used for this particular term, Sakkaya Ditti. Most commonly, it is translated like a self-illusion. And again, belief in a self, kind of permanent entity which is bound or connected to the life. Self-identity view. Self-identity view means that is also the same. One has a sort of idea regarding permanent entity connected or with life, and belief in a permanent self. an unchanging entity that migrates from birth to birth, from life to life, is connected to the entity which is taken to be life. And it is considered to be eternal or immortal. Eternal or kind of immortal entity that transmigrate or pass on from life to life in the cycle of re-becoming, in the cycle of death and birth. Briefly, we can say in samsaric life. So, this is the major or main obstacle. If one clings to the five aggregates, believing that they constitute an eternal and absolute entity, just as I or me or mine, it is an illusion which drags on the individual in continuous existence of suffering in the cycle of birth and death or samsara or samsaric life. So when it comes to conventional truth, of course, we can talk about I, me, mine. Likewise, we can talk about individual. But when talking about absolute or ultimate truth, or when we go into a deeper sense of reality, we cannot find any sort of permanent constituents within or connected to the five aggregates, which again constitute the so-called individual or life. Following four types of elusive self-identification is surfaced in clinging to five aggregates. So, the concept of self or the view of self-identification is developed in four different perspectives in the scripture. Postulation or assumption of the body to be the self. The other is postulation or assumption of the self as possessing the body. Postulation or assumption of the body as within the self. Postulation or assumption of the self as within the body. So, these are the ways that an individual makes an attempt or tries to understand the concept of self or individuality. Oh, this is the assumption. This is the way that somebody can make sort of assumption regarding view of selfness. In the Penapindupama Sutta of the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha has compared the five aggregates of clinging to five different subtly and quickly changing phenomena as follows. Physical rupa, physical forms or rupa, they are compared to sort of mass of form, which are flickering. Rupa or physical forms are compared to collection of forms and feeling. So then actually, so these, when contemplating on these similes or comparisons, we can understand how transitory, how impermanent the formation of a physical body is. Then comes feelings, Vedana. Feelings of Vedana are compared to be bubbles of water. So anyone can understand that bubbles of water last only a very little time. Sometimes we cannot mention that a particular flash of time. So that is how the sensations or feelings are that we experience in our life. So when considering these comparisons or similes, we can understand when taking these separately or collectively, we can understand how impermanent they are. And perceptions or sanya are compared to a mirage. So which is anyway, mirage is something which we cannot physically experience. Mirage is not something really existing. So the memory part connected to life should be considered accordingly. And mental formations or sankara, the trunk of a banana tree, which has no hard core or sort of essence in center. So we can remove coil by coil of a banana trunk, but we cannot find any sort of core or essence even in the center. The coils themselves are not sort of related to essence. Then consciousness for vijnana is compared to a magician or prestidigitator. Prestidigitator, that is a term actually used, it is not commonly used. Prestidigitator or an illusion. We can see that is also used when translating this simile. And in order to eliminate the view of self-identification or selfness, one has to consider the constituents of 5 aggregates as follows. And there cannot be abiding or long-lasting essence at any level. When we analyze the 5 aggregates or the constituents of 5 aggregates one by one, we can find nothing abiding in them or connected to them or with them. So here in Buddhism, we are taught how we can examine the entity to be taken as life, so that we can eliminate the notion or the concept of selfness or self-identification. So chakku needs to be seen as suffering or dukkha. And that realization will help to dilute or eliminate self-identification we. So simply we cannot say that I is suffering, but we have to look at in a different perspective so that we can understand what it means. When deeply seeing, it causes only suffering, but gives temporary satisfaction or enjoyment. Even though we can have sort of temporary satisfaction, kind of enjoyment with that particular faculty of chakku or eye, but when seeing deeply, we cannot have permanent satisfaction or enjoyment with or using chakku or eye. So when analyzing 5 aggregates or components or any entities connected with life, we have to do it in different perspectives, different angles, different levels, different ways, so that we can reach the reality. Also, we can reach the absolute nature of our own life. So we have to see how they form. Now we know what our life is, what are the faculties which are connected and function with life, and we have to see how they form the physical entity. What are the properties used for forming? We have to analytically understand the properties, the elements which are used for forming our life. Oh, and again, what is the composition? What is the composition of life? And can that composition last long? So we can simply understand that life is a composition of different elements and energies. So we have to understand what are those compositions. Can they be connected or can they be collective for a long period? Can they function the same way as we wish? Can that composition last long? How they collectively and separately function? And how they are powered? What are the powers and energies involved there? And what are they powered with? What are the causes? And what are the effects? Are those causes and effects last long? Are they interconnected eternally? Likewise, when analyzing the physical part and psychic part, faculties, whatever components it may be, whatever entity it may be, if we can analyze in different perspectives, different ways, different angles, different levels, when analyzing only we can understand the proper composition, the proper function. So simply we can, now here earlier, you can see that simply it is us, we have to see chakku needs to be seen or taken as suffering. When it is expressed like that, sometimes it may be a bit confusing. But when deeply analyzing, of course, we can understand these faculties the composition of these faculties, and as a unit of these faculties, they are not permanent themselves, and their functions are not permanent, and their effects and causes, whatever connected, everything is relative and conditioned. That is what we can see or understand at the end. And again, visual object, rupa, needs to be seen and taken as suffering. In the process of contacting, we can experience, we can see visual objects, rupa. So we have to see whether the object, these visual objects or rupa, are they permanent? Their composition are permanent. Their causes are permanent. Their effects are permanent. Likewise, we can simply say that visual objects are suffering. But even though we just tell that n factor, an individual may not be able to properly realize how those visual objects can be suffering. So we have to emphasize how they become suffering. And that realization will help to dilute if we can understand correctly and realistically regarding those visual objects. That realization, that understanding also will help us to dilute or eliminate the self-identification or the notion of Atma and I consciousness, Chakku Vinyana. Even that phenomena needs to be seen or taken as suffering. So just to take it as suffering, we have to correctly analyze, correctly understand, wisely realize what it is and how it causes suffering. What is the reality? Hidden the mere satisfaction. And eye contact, Chakku Sampassa, needs to be seen and taken as suffering. So contact is kind of process. Even that process is not permanent. The elements or the phenomena which cause that particular effect or process are not permanent, not last long. They don't last long. So likewise, we have to understand how they become or how they end up in suffering. If we can deeply comprehend in different angles, in different perspectives, only we can realize that that particular process causes suffering, and that understanding will help us to dilute or eliminate the self-identification view, Sakkaya Ditthi. So this is the major obstacle. This is the most difficult fetter or samyojana that one has to dilute. And again, agreeable or pleasant feelings and disagreeable or unpleasant feelings. So based on the process of eye and visual objects and eye consciousness, we can experience a sort of agreeable feelings, or sometimes agreeable or pleasant feelings, sometimes disagreeable or unpleasant feelings, or sometimes in between, that we neither pleasant nor unpleasant, or neither agreeable or disagreeable, which are identified to be upekkha or neutral. In that whole process, all those phenomena together, these we can have these three tones of sensations. Even these sensations are they need to be taken or considered to be kind of impermanent experiences, neutral feelings, upekkha vedana, causing or arising from eye contact, need be seen and taken as suffering. And that realization will help to dilute or eliminate self-identification view. Sakkaya. In brief, all these fetters make the person blindly involved in the existence of suffering. So that is what fetters do. Fetters make us blind in the existence of suffering, mainly due to enjoyable feelings, agreeable feelings. Then comes vichikiccha, skeptical doubt. Vichikiccha, skeptical doubt. That is, most of the time we can see that a particular Pali term is translated as skeptical doubt. Similar or compared to turbid or muddy water. If the water is not clear, we can't see our image. Nothing reflects muddy water. One cannot see the reflection in muddy water. Or sometimes vichikiccha simply we can translate it is doubt or uncertainty, especially about the Buddha's awakeness and 9 supermundane consciousnesses. So anyway, vichikiccha is just like being stranded, not knowing the correct direction. So then when vichikiccha is prevalent, the individual is not quite aware about the path on which he should tread, on which he should walk. So this is also kind of fetter that we have to eliminate, because vichikiccha covers the path of the Eightfold Path. Vichikiccha means skeptical doubt. When detailing, it can be pointed out as doubt in the following 8 areas. the Buddha, the enlightened one. If an individual thinks if there was such an enlightened one called Buddha, if someone is hesitant regarding Buddha, that vacillating mind can be identified to be Vicikicca. And again, Dhamma. Dhamma means the reality of life and liberation. Dhamma means the whole content of life and the way in which it can be liberated from the existence of suffering. And then Sangha, the practitioners and enlightened ones. Buddhe kankati, dhamme kankati, sanghe kankati. They don't believe that there are practitioners, spiritual practitioners like Sangha or enlightened Arahat or practitioners who are on the path. They don't believe. And the disciplinary rules for purification. These are the areas that skeptical doubt can be observed. The existence in past lives, example, what I have been in the past. Sometimes the individual cannot understand whether he's been in a particular life in past. And sixth one, the existence in future. If all fetters are not removed, we believe that our existence in death and birth or sansaric life continues. The existence continues life after life. If we have not eliminated all fetters with which we are bound to sansaric life. And seventh, both the past and the future existence of beings, whether somebody has been or going to be in the future. The doubt is there. And the doctrine of dependent origination, or paticca samuppada. That is the reality of existence of all beings, very vividly and comprehensively explained how sentient beings continues in the process of becoming and re-becoming in the doctrine of dependent origination. So even there, this person with skeptical doubt doesn't keep confidence on, doesn't bank confidence on the doctrine of dependent origination. And the law of nature regarding the process of becoming and re-becoming. That is the dependent origination. If one is of doubt, it is just like losing the way without having proper directions. So being a skeptical doubt is just like not having the map so that one can reach the correct destination. So that is why skeptical doubt or vicikicca considered to be fetter here. A factor from which we have to be released. And Silabbata Paramasa. Varadi Sil Varadivata Paramarashane Kirim, attachment to rites and rituals. Rites and rituals. Sela Urata. Grasping at precepts and practices. Some people, they are blindly attached to wrong types of rites and rituals. Blindly attached to or blindly grasped, believing and observing wrong precepts and practices. Attachment to such rules and rituals are considered to be Silabbata Parama. So this is observance of profane, mithyadrishtika, unorthodox, mityaditti, or heretical rites and rituals. Any rites or rituals, any precepts or practices which are not suitable to develop the path are considered to be profane or unorthodox or heretical rites and rituals. You can see that I use the different terms for the same word, because Silabbata Paramasa, when describing that particular fetter in different places of scripture or Pali Canon, when it comes to their translations of English, we can see these terms are used. So I collect most of them and present here for your information. Performing rigorous, sometimes maybe performing rigorous ascetic religious practice to achieve moral purity with ardent devotion, hoping to realize the emancipation. Sometimes they are tightly bound with these rituals. Sometimes maybe they are very rigorous type of ascetic religious practices. Actually, we can understand a lot of such practices in the age of the Buddha. In India, in the age of the Buddha, there were a lot of religious cultures, religious groups, and different schools where we can see they perform these type of rigorous ascetic religious practices in order to achieve purification, in order to realize emancipation. Here the individual is involved in performing and practicing unwise rites and rituals rather than purification of mind. So when it comes to Buddhism, of course, the main practice is purification of mind. Even in Buddhism, we have developed very rich culture with rites and rituals. But anyway, still we believe that for the purification, or for the emancipation, realization, we do have to purify, perfectly purify our mind. So purification of mind is the main and major exercise which is prescribed in the path. And we have to set it free from fermentation of defilements. Fermentations are so. When defilements are very old, when they derive from very deeper past lives, They are identified to be asava or fermentations. So we have to set our mind free from those fermentations of defilements or evils for the sake of spiritual liberation. So for that purpose, we have to be away from these wrong rites and rituals. From these, we have to be away from these profane practices. We have to do away all these unorthodox or heretical practices and approaches. Kamachanda, sensual desire. So that is actually Kamachanda is usually translated as sensual desire or sensual lust or sensuous craving. So those are the terms which are generally used when translating Kamachanda. So this particular fetter is very clear. We all can understand because being laymen, we are entangled with sensual desires due to various reasons and factors. Sensual desire, sensual lust, sensuous craving. And it is compared to water mixed with multiple colors, Kamachanda, because that is so misleading, giving temporary enjoyment and satisfactions. So Kamachanda is, in a way we can say that willingness to satisfy sense faculties and thus enjoy sensual pleasures. Thirst or covetousness for sense pleasure, craving for sense satisfaction, for sense gratifications. Sometimes even passion is used. Passion for fulfillment of sense desires. He is identified to be most challenging of the obstacles to moral and spiritual perfection. So actually we find it very difficult to develop a moral life, as the sensual desire is deeply inculcated in our mind. So we find it very difficult to eradicate this particular fetter. But anyway, we can make some effort to suppress or control. But anyway, it's a very difficult course of exercise in the spiritual path. And Vyapad, hatred and ill will. So this is also sometimes we can say repulsion. The mentality to harm or hurt others. Now we have kind of deeply hidden mentality to harm others. Especially now we are in thirst of enjoying kamachanda, sensual pleasure. We thirst. We deeply desire to enjoy sensual pleasure. So, in case we find any obstacle for that enjoyment, they are basically vyapada or hatred or ill will arises against those individuals and situations. Then we develop some aggressive or agitative sort of mind in us to harm them, hurt them. It is compared to boiling water. When we are agitated, when we are revengeful, when we are on fire, our mind is just like boiling water. We cannot see our reflection on boiling water. That likewise, when we are irritated, when we are on fire, when we are in deeper hostility, we cannot understand who we are, what our mind is. So that is also a fetter which impedes the progress of the spiritual journey. We can actually, that Vyapada can be surfaced in our mind in different forms, in different levels, in different tones. Sometimes it can be agitation, sometimes it can be in form of revenge or retaliation, sometimes simply anger, irritation. Then we tend to pay back from other people. And sometimes we can say that on fire or aversion, hostility. All these things are, these terms are used to express the different shapes of this particular mentality of Vyapada or hatredness, or mentality of ill will. And that is also considered to be fetter, which has to be removed on our way towards liberation. And Ruparaga, lust for material existence, lust for material rebirth. Here Ruparaga is not simply actually, so very simply we can say that the mentality of liking to enjoy visual forms, material forms. But anyway, this is deeper than that. The yogis or practitioners, when they develop their mind into certain levels of dhyana or trance, rupavachara dhyana, material based trance, they develop sort of mentality, and due to that they wish to have their rebecoming in the realms, material realms of existence, which are upper levels in the existence or samsaric life. And then arupara, that is a deeper desire compared to that, lust for material existence, lust for rebirth in formless realms. So that they know that the yogi, the practitioner, is thoroughly aware it is very difficult to maintain the setting, environment, the context, so that they can enjoy the sensual life in this sensual realms of existence. And it is really rough. So if they can be a rebirth in sort of formless realms, they believe that it is permanent and without any disturbances, they can continue their enjoyment, satisfaction of that particular being. So this is actually passion for what is formless, craving for incorporeal existence, craving for formless realms, lust, akinchanyayata, nirsanya, nasanya. So when we develop trance of upper levels, this is the mentality that they can reap out of that kind of concentration. So this is also bound with existence. That's why it is not accepted in the teaching of the Buddha. Lust of formless existence, subtle attachments to formless state. This happens because they are developed high concentration to the level of or standards of neither perception nor non-perception. Then mana, conceit. That is all the time that particular term, Pali term is translated like conceit, self-important. Arrogant type, simply we can say that in society, arrogant type of outcome could be noticed here. One feels that he is superior to others. Compare here the individual makeup or develop certain criteria in order to measure this particular being with others. So when this comparison is there, the comparison can be of different levels, different angles, using different perspectives. But anyway, the comparison is the outcome of conceit. That is also a fetter. Even in spiritual life, one can think that I am more virtuous than the other spiritual master. I am more knowledgeable and wise than that particular spiritual master. Likewise, even among spiritual practitioners, this kind of mentality can be surfaced, not only in general mass. So one feels that he is superior to others. That is identified to be superiority complex. In general terms, I mean. Judging another to be inferior compared to him. That is identified to be inferiority complex. Sayyavana, Sadisamana, Adhimana, likewise. And comparison state of mentality in different perspectives and levels. So this is also that they think that I am vegetarian, that person is not. I am very virtuous. I am meditative, that one is not meditative. I am virtuous, that one is not virtuous. So I am pure, that person is not that much pure. So if we have that kind of comparing type of mind or mentality, that is considered to be conceit or man, and identified to be fetter, which has to be removed, which has to be eliminated. And uddatta, restlessness. The term uddatta is generally translated as restlessness. It is the mind is unfocused. The mind is confused and distracted. Restless state of mind. So there can be different reasons. Even when practicing, if we cannot have good results when practicing a spiritual path, we get this kind of mentality, that dispersed mind. we are not satisfied. We think that we make very big effort and we are on the correct track. Anyway, we cannot reap better results. Yielding results are getting later and later. So the individual is not satisfied. Mind is not in peaceful type of level. The individual is confused, complicated with dispersed mentality. It is described as a sort of turmoil state of mind. It is the opposite of calm and fully focused mind. So the practitioner is the mind of practitioner or yogi is very composed, deposit, and peaceful, and he can easily collect the mind. Can do away with that practitioner can do away with this negative mental phenomena of that or restlessness and avidya, ignorance. And this is the 10th one. But anyway, even though we enumerate or we set them according to particular order, we cannot say this is something very rigid or permanent type of order. Sometimes it can vary. So because even today in different schools of Buddhism, Samprayana, Vajrayana and Theravada, we can see a particular difference in this order. But anyway, when it comes to the basic factors, all schools are the same. So anyway, we have to understand these are certain psychological aspects which have to be purified with proper practice on the path, on the Eightfold Path. The first 5 of these are called lower fetters. Urambhagya Samyojana. They tie the individual to sensuous world. The last 5 are called higher fetters. Udambhagya Samyojana. That is actually due to the realms of existence. If we remove the lower fetters or the first 5, we can be free from lower existence. And if we can eradicate the up to 9th one can be in the upper realms of existence. The last 5 are called higher fetters, Uddambhagya, Samyojana. They tie the individual to the higher realms of existence, as they are involved in the fine material and immaterial realms of existence. Once a fetter is, the other important matter is, once a fetter is eliminated, it is permanent and does not re-emerge. That is the notion of Theravada, but that is also a bit controversial with regard to other schools, because sometimes even somebody achieves the level of Sotapanna or stream winner. Some philosophers say that there is still tendency for getting down. But it is not accepted in Theravada teaching. One who is free from 1 to 3. Sakkaditya, Vitikiccha, Silabbata, Paramasa. Right? When one is free from those three, he reached the level of Sotapanna or stream winner. He becomes Arya Puggal. Because at this stage, the individual enters the stream to Nibbana. Sotan Apan. Pravaheta Katana. He is determined to be liberated. He gets a sort of sign or indication of Nibbana, as his vision is clear regarding the path. He has the map. He knows where to go for liberation. He knows what is to practice for liberation. He knows what is to do for liberation. He also has the full confidence of the path leading to emancipation. The stream winner, until he fully ends up suffering and attains liberation, bounds to be re-becoming in 7 more times, either in the realm of human or heaven, which is generally identified to be sensual world. Sometimes there can be only 5 lives or 4 lives, but maximum 7. There are a lot of similes, examples, stories to understand this kind of level, but I'm not going to elaborate everything deeply, as most of you are thoroughly aware, quite aware of that. He never be born in lower worlds. He is steady on the path. He is firmly established and destined to full enlightenment. He ends suffering and doesn't get involved in treading wrong path. Even being a human, never get involved in lower behaviors. Most of the time, that person doesn't repeat the wrong. There can be such individual. How we can identify is he, most of the time, he never repeats the wrong. There are 4 characteristics, qualities of the stream winner, Sotapanna. Unshakable faith towards the enlightened one. Unshakable faith towards the doctrine, Dhamma. Unshakable faith towards the order, Sangha. Perfect morality. Ethically very sound. Very high human qualities can be observed. In today's society, we can say he's a pure gentleman, pure monk. These are called Sotapatti Anga. The individual who overcomes those 3 and further overcomes 4 and 5, 4th and 5th, in their grosser form, not completely, they overcome in their grosser form into certain level, not totally, is Sakadaga, or once return. We call it once returner because he returns to sensual world only one time. Because he returns to this sensual world only one time. The 4th and the 5th ones are not fully annihilated. the fourth and the fifth fetters, they are not fully annihilated, but suppressed, highly controlled, nearly annihilated. Once the practitioner reaches this state, fourth one, Kamachanda, and the fifth one, Vyapada, both are nearly disappeared. Nearly disappeared, not totally. Their grosser levels are not seen at this stage. When the individual reaches to the state of Sakadagami, once returner, once only returns to the sensual world. The one who fully surpasses or overcomes from 1 to 5 is an anagami or non-return. When fourth and fifth are fully annihilated, along with the first three, when they are fully annihilated, they reach the stage of anagami or non-return. They never return to sensual world. He never comes back to the sensual world. The fourth and the fifth, which are partly annihilated or suppressed, are fully removed, annihilated at this particular stage, anagami. The practitioner who reaches the stage of anagami or non-returner confines to be re-becoming once more in a pure abode, upper realms of existence, Brahmaloka. And one who is free from all the 10 fetters is called Arhat, perfectly liberated Holy One, enlightened one. So these are the fetters and the stages, levels, the planes that one can reach to the degree that they annihilate those fetters. The realms, now anyway, Venerable Theodore, do you have any issue regarding these things so that we can further discuss them?
How can we overcome this particular Sakkaya Ditthi? Can you elaborate something?
Sakkaya Ditthi. Right. Now we can discuss the sentences which I sent you for translation. So basically, you have to translate all those sentences using this particular usage, can, could, and be plus able. So you know that we use can, could to talk about ability. Right? I can speak 3 languages. That is a particular ability that we can express using can. So you know that different individuals have different abilities. When talking about abilities, we can use can. And again, we can talk about possibility. Even sort of possibility can be expressed by using can and could. Smoking can cause cancer. Smoking can cause cancer. And permission. Can I use your dictionary? So that is also a particular way of requesting or getting permission. So we can see that informal way we can use can, could for permissions. and request. The most common way of making request is using can. Can you hand me the dictionary? And offer, can I help you to do it? There you offer to do a favor to somebody else. And cannot, not allowed. You cannot smoke here. So for not allowing, we use cannot. And could for past abilities. I could play the organ when I was young. It means now I am not that much able. Anyway, I was able to play. I could play the organ when I was young. And possibility. A lot of crime could be prevented if the law is enforced properly. A lot of crime could be prevented. And permission. Could we go home now, please? So it's a kind of request that we can make using food. And suggestions. I could help you with English. Conditional on can. I could visit many places if I had money, more money. Now, I got some translation, but now you can see that Karunakarla ටිකක් කයියෙන් කතා කරනවා. The translate කරලා තිබුණ සමහර අය, can you please speak loudly? Can you please speak loudly? That is not the proper way of telling it. ටිකක් කයියෙන් කතා කරනවාද? Could you please speak up a bit? Can you please speak up a bit? ටිකක් හිමීට කතා කරනවා. ඒක translate කරලා තිබුණා. That idea was translated like could you please speak slowly? Can you speak slowly? That is also not the proper way of telling it. Slowly means if you speak slowly, anyone can understand. And that is slowly. That is not meant there. Could you please speak softly? If somebody is making a lot of noise when talking, we would ask him to lower down his voice, making a request of this type. Could you please speak softly? Can you please speak softly? So if we are going to translate direct Sinhala wordings into English, of course, there we might get it mistaken. And you know that by using either can or could, we can make request. You know, there are different ways of making request. Right now here you can see certain ways of making request. Is it okay if I leave earlier? Doesn't it matter if I leave earlier? Do you mind if I leave earlier? Would you mind if I leave earlier? Would you mind my leaving earlier? May I leave earlier? Would I leave a bit earlier? Can I leave a bit earlier? Likewise, there are different ways of making request, but most common way of making request is using either can or could. And thereafter, you know that we can use either can or could just to talk about abilities. You know that you have different abilities and me too. All the people have different kind of abilities. So when talking about our abilities, where we are good at or where we are competent in, all right, just to express those competencies or areas where we are good at, we can just use either can or could. I can do it. That means I'm able to do it. It is possible for me to do it. Right? I can't do it. It's not possible for me to do it. Or I'm not able to do it. Likewise, there are different ways that we can make the same idea. So anyway, we should understand, we use can when talking about abilities that we possess. Can you speak French? Can't you speak? Can't you do it? And when talking about past abilities, of course, we can use could, but there we have to be very careful. Right? I could do it yesterday. I could do it yesterday. Right? මට ඒක ඊයේ කරන්න නැහැ වුණා. මට ඒක ඊයේ කරන්න පුළුවන් වුණා. I couldn't do it yesterday. මට ඒක ඊයේ කරන්න බැරි වුණා. But you can never go for questioning when it comes to past abilities. කවදාකවත් අපිට ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න බෑ. Could you do it yesterday? වාට ඒක ඊයේ කරන්න පුළුවන් වුණාද කියලා ඉංග්‍රීසියෙන් could එක දාලා අතීත හැකියාවන් සම්බන්ධ ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න බෑ.
Then how can we
I will show you the way. Right? I will show you the way, but anyway, you should understand, you can never question. Right? Now that is what we can do by using either can or could. Then can could වලින් එච්චරයි කරන්න පුළුවන්. But we can cover a very greater area with regard to abilities and all by using be plus able to. I am able to do it, I can do it. I am not able to do it, I can't do it. Are you able to do it? Can you do it? Aren't you able to do it? Can't you do it? Likewise, you know that when it comes to be forms, of course, we find different forms of be. So we can talk about abilities in different levels, in different tones, in different meanings, using be plus able. I will give you an answer to your question when proceeding the lesson. Here you get the answer. I was able to do it. I could do it. I was able to do it yesterday. I could do it. I wasn't able to do it yesterday. I couldn't do it. Now we can't go for questioning using could. Could you do it yesterday? You can never ask. There you have to use be plus able. Were you able to go to the bank yesterday? You can never ask, could you go to the bank yesterday? Weren't you able to do it? You can never ask, couldn't you do it yesterday? You can never raise questions regarding past abilities using could. There you can use either was over plus able to. Could you translate all the sentences? Wrong. You can't ask it like that. Could you translate all the sentences last week? That is wrong. You can never ask, could you translate all those sentences? Instead, you have to correctly ask, were you able to translate all the sentences? Were you able to translate all the sentences last week? Is it okay, Jinasiri Thero? You got the answer?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I'll be able to do it. I won't be able to do it. Now you can see that even future forms are there. Will you be able to do it? Will you be able to do it? Will you be able to promote your business? Won't you be able to do it?
Promote, we can't say that develop.
Yeah, okay, can. And you know that when talking about abilities, poor abilities, you cannot use either can nor could. Yeah, of course, you can use may might. I may be able to do it. Bagada pelak pelawat samahara vita mata ek karanna puluwan වෙයි. You can never make idea of that type using either can or could. That means you cannot use poor type of ability using either can or could. There, for that purpose, you need to turn to using maybe or might be plus able to. I may be able to do it, I might be able to do it. Right? He may not be able to pass the exam because he doesn't work hard. Bagada by passing very well. He doesn't work hard. He doesn't do a lot of learning. He doesn't do a lot of studies. He may be able to buy a car. Bagada at a kayak ganna hakwi puluwan වෙයි. And you should be able to speak English or English kataran puluwan නම් හොඳයි. So you cannot make this type of ability by using either can or could. You ought to be able to speak English. You should be able to speak Tamil. Or Demala kata karanna හැක් නම් හොඳයි පුළුවන් නම් හොඳයි. Your wife should be able to manage and run your home affairs successfully. යමක් කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා නම් හොඳයි කියලා කැනකුඩ් වලින් කියන්න බෑ. You must be able to advise them. So likewise, you cannot emphasize kind of action using can, but you can do it using must be plus able. You must be able to manage your business. And again, you never can talk about sort of ability covering from past up to now. That of course can be done using as plus able. You can never do this kind of thing using can or do. I've been able to do a lot of work these days.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Excuse
Yes, I can do. He hasn't been able to get home in time these days. මේ ටිකේ මෙයාට වෙලාවට ගෙදර එන්න බැරි වෙලා. And just managed to. දැන් B plus able to එකනුත් බැරි, should එකනුත් කරන්න බැරි දෙයක් මේකෙන් පුළුවන්. යාන්තම් ගොඩ දාගත්තේ. I just managed to catch the train. If I were a minute late, I would have missed the train. I just managed to get home without getting wet. If I were 5 minutes late, I would have got caught in the rain. යාන්තම් කෝච්චි අල්ලගන්න හැකියි. යාන්තම් නොතෙමි ගැටගොඩ වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So if you got the chance, if you got a very rare chance of course, you have to use manage to. Most probably we use even just the term just there. The word just there. Adverbial part there. But I just managed to contact that person. And now you can see the summary. I can do it. I could do it. I am able to do it. I was able to do it. I'll be able to do it. I've been able to do it. I have been able to get up early since my childhood. You can talk about kind of ability mixing past and present both. So that can never be done with the help of either can or could. But you can do it using be plus able, as it has different forms in different tenses. I may be able to do it. I should be able to do it. I must be able to do it. But I just managed to do it.